Well, hi everybody. Tonight, we are starting with a presentation by the Zeta Charter School. Um, Eileen Gray is presenting on their behalf. Hi, Eileen.
Hi, it's very nice to meet everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to join this evening.
Absolutely. So Eileen is going to give a presentation, and then we'll ask some questions after her presentation. So Eileen, please continue.
Wonderful. Okay, let me figure out how to share my screen. Apologize. I think it's making me jump out of the webinar and then I guess I'll rejoin to be able to share. I'm so sorry.
It's
It's
okay.
okay.
We would not be able to vote on anything tonight because I don't think we don't have a quorum.
Not yet. Let's keep our fingers crossed. What we can do is we can take a straw poll on this resolution and then we can put it to the board.
Okay.
But what we're gonna have to do is be very clear that this is different than the resolution we passed before, because the resolution before was for the mandate, whereas this resolution is for the funding,
Got it.
the money. Are you able to share now, Eileen? I don't hear you. I think you're muted.
Hi, sorry about that. Yes, one moment. Okay, it looks like I'm able to share. So let me get this up.
1 second,
Mm.
please. Okay.
Okay. Are you all able to see the slide? Every child has the right to an excellent education in front of you.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. My name is Eileen Gray. I'm the Director of Strategic Impact for Zeta Charter Schools, and we are currently applying to open a free public charter school in your district in Community School District 28, which would open in fall 2025. And so I'm here today to share a little bit with you all about our proposal and really to invite your input, your feedback, and your questions. As part of our application process, we've been meeting with community members and community leaders to really understand what it is that you are looking for, what it is the community is looking for, and what the priorities are in your district, so that we can really be partners in bringing more excellent education to more students in Queens and in particular in your district. So just to start with a little bit about Zeta, and please also feel free to interrupt me as I go along. I'm happy to take questions as we go and also at the end. But first, just to share a little bit about our schools. We currently serve 2,700 children in grades pre-K through 6 across 7 campuses in the Bronx and Upper Manhattan. Our schools add 1 grade per year as our students age up, and we will eventually serve students in the full pre-K to 12th grade span. We are also proud to be a top 4 charter network in New York City based on the most recent 2023 New York State tests, and the only top network to have a whole child model, which I'll share more about in just a moment. This is our mission at Zeta. We are on a mission to ensure that every child in America has access to the highest quality free education from pre-K through 12th grade. And we use a next generation model that's really designed to prepare Zeta students for access and leadership in the modern world by combining excellent academics with our whole child education. So on this next slide, you can see a little bit more about our whole child model. It is built on 4 pillars: rigorous academics, what we call mind, body, heart cultivation. That's really our whole child approach. innovation culture, and wow through family service. Rigorous academics, first and foremost, is any good school. We are committed to excellent academics and really to serving all students at a high level, whether they are struggling, have special needs, are English language learners, or at advanced. We have a differentiated curriculum for our students. Secondly, as I mentioned, we have a really robust whole child model. This includes social emotional learning curriculum, which is woven throughout our school day, as well as kind of dedicated curricular blocks. And we also have mindfulness and meditation practices, which our students engage in every day. We also have a really robust specialty and extracurricular program. It includes music, violin, chess, art, taekwondo, soccer, dance, sports. We are constantly trying to add more specialty programs based on the interests of our students and as our students age into the higher grades. And these are really designed to help our students discover their talents and their passions. Thirdly, as I mentioned, our innovation culture. This really helps us prioritize hands-on and inquiry-based learning in our curriculum and includes our Zeta Innovation Lab, which is Z-Lab, which is part of our curriculum focused around design thinking, engineering, and is a makerspace where students can practice really inquiry-based learning and problem-solving skills. And finally, as I mentioned, our wow through family service. This is really our commitment to partnering with our families and really viewing our role as educators as an active partnership with families to provide to children the best education possible and the best experience for our families in our school communities as possible. Our schools are neighborhood schools that reflect the diversity of the communities we serve. On this slide, you can see our current school year demographics across all of our schools. We currently serve 98% students of color, 87% of our students are qualified for free or reduced price lunch, 15% of our students have special needs, and 12% of our students are English language learners. Our emphasis on rigor and on joy has resulted in exceptional student achievement throughout Zeta's history. You can see on the left of this slide, in our first year, we had 90% of our students in the year on or above grade level. And this was actually our first and only year before the COVID-19 pandemic. In the middle, you can see our results. During COVID, we still achieved 1 year reading growth for our students in that time period. And in 2020-21 school year was our first year with testing grade students. And we had 80% of our students that year, our third graders, pass the state tests. On the right, you can see our state test results from this most recent cycle, which actually I'll go to the next slide, where you can see a little bit more detail on that. We're really proud of the achievement of our students. Last year, 87% of our students passed the math state test and 76% of our students passed the ELA state test. And statewide, this put our students in the top 95th percentile for math and 94th percentile in ELA. And of course, as I mentioned before, all of this was without compromising our whole child approach and ensuring our students still had the robust specialty curriculum and lots of joy in learning throughout the school day. Our schools are located in permanent private facilities that are specially designed and built for us to provide a state-of-the-art, joyful learning environment for all of our students. On this slide, you can see our five campuses currently, all of which were open in the last 5 years of operation. And that concludes the information I have prepared. But again, I am more than happy to answer any questions. And I would love to hear from all of you on the committee what is most important to you as you think about schools in your district.
If I could start with some questions, would you mind, Sherry?
Go ahead.
Okay. Where do you plan to, where is the school planned for?
So right now we're looking broadly within Community School District 28, and the exact location is going to depend on where we find facility location as well as transportation access.
When you say you're looking for space, are you looking to cohabitate with another school, or are you looking to find your own space that you would pay for yourself?
Yeah, so our preference would be to continue in private spaces, and certainly long term would be to develop a private space. In the short term, we again would look either for private space, private temporary space we can rent if it's available. If not, we would consider looking at cohabitated space, but our preference is to look for private space if that's available.
And will you be looking to the DOE to help you subsidize the cost of that space, or are you assuming the cost of that space on your own?
I'm not entirely sure I understand your question. So do you mean around the facilities funding or just in general for cost of building out the school?
Well, if you typically, again, if I'm understanding this correctly, most of the time when charter schools have their own private spaces, they look to the DOE to pay their rent in those spaces. So I'm asking, who would be paying for the rent?
I see your question. So we would receive the per pupil funding and facilities funding if it is a rental agreement as per the DOE's processes, but any other funding we would cover ourselves.
But you would be looking to the DOE to fund the rent of said facility.
We would be looking to the DOE to cover the per pupil costs of the operations.
Right, that's standard as to how public schools are operating to begin with. That per pupil base amount, and then if you have the child's on an IEP, you would get some more gravy on top of that. And if the child was an English language learner, there's more gravy on top of that. Totally understand that. What I'm just concerned is that I just want to make sure that the DOE is not also picking up the cost in all transparency for the rental of your space as well.
So they wouldn't pick up the rental costs. There is the per pupil facilities funding that the DOE provides for charter schools. So we would be accessing that if it is a rental agreement, as opposed to if we were to purchase the building, it would work differently.
Okay, understood. Sherry, that's all my questions for now.
The schools, the other schools that you mentioned, the other locations, are they rented or do you own the premises?
The current 5 that I showed you, those are all rental agreements.
Does anybody have any other questions?
Ari put a question in the chat. He is interested in the demographics of the students and how that compares to faculty and leadership. I'm not trying to say what he's asking, but will students find themselves reflected in the faculty? And then how diverse is the faculty? And then I see Jessica on board with a question.
Absolutely. So I don't have those numbers exactly off the top of my head, but our school leaders are all of our school principals are actually women of color this year, and our teachers are, I think it's around 70 or 80%, maybe higher, teachers, people of color, many of whom are actually Bronx or New York natives, so from the very communities where they're teaching.
Okay.
Jessica?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. I have quite a few questions because I'm sort of new to charter schools, but my first question is that all the kids in the DOE actually qualify for free lunch? And so are your lunches and food service from the DOE currently, or are they private?
We actually use a private vendor that we contract to do our food services. And all of our students, we provide the meals to all of our students.
And then my other question is that you mentioned being close to transportation. So do you mean by like buses or subways? Because that obviously rules out quite a few locations within this area.
Yes, so that is our has been our preference for locations to date in the Bronx and in Manhattan, trying to locate near public transportation so that we're accessible to all the families that we serve and to our staff. And so that's one of the criteria we think about and look at as we're looking for space.
Okay, great. And my very last question is that where do the kids go after 6th grade? Because most of our schools in this district are pre-K to 5. I think we have 1 to 6th grade, and then
Mhm.
most start for middle school and high school. So where do your kids go after they leave?
That's a great question. So actually, they will continue with us. We're adding 1 grade level every year as our students age up. So right now, our oldest students who started with us as 1st graders are in 6th grade. Next year, we will have 7th grade, and they will go to 7th grade, and they have the option of staying with us all the way through 12th grade. So we will serve up through those grades as our students age up.
Just any more.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Eileen, you just mentioned that you keep adding grades as your students age up. Do you find yourself needing to expand your premises to accommodate the growing student population?
Yes, so that's a great question. Right now, the facilities that we have, they're built to be, some of them are just elementary schools and some of them are built to be elementary and middle. So they will serve all of our students up through the middle school grades. And then we are looking also, we'll open another building to serve our high school students.
Okay, and I believe we have a question in the chat. Ari says, I may have missed this, but why is Zeta interested in opening here? And where will they draw their students from?
That's a great question. So we're interested in opening in Queens because we had heard and seen that there was demand and need for other high quality school options like charter schools. We had spoken with many families and conducted some community outreach and actually had about, I think it was 781 families express a desire to enroll their child with a Zeta school. And so that is kind of why we are interested in coming and opening a school in Queens to serve that family need.
But Queens is a large borough,
Mhm.
and I mean, it sounds to me like, and you have to forgive me for being so upright, but upfront, but it sounds to me like, and from the looks of the different places you've been doing presentations, it looks like you're fishing for a location that you haven't quite figured it out, because you're saying you want to do District 28, but you've also done presentations in Maspeth, which is not District 28. So I'm a little confused as to, you give the appearance that you have a focus on 28, but some of what I'm seeing doesn't seem to be that way, because when we asked the question about where you draw students from, you talked about the borough as a whole and not District 28.
That's a wonderful question. Thank you, Heather. So to give a little bit fuller context and bigger picture, we are looking to open a school in CSD 24, CSD 25, and CSD 28. We've conducted outreach across all 3 of those districts and have been looking to see where there might be need and demand. The 781 families I mentioned, those are all from CSD 28. We've seen sort of similar interest across the 3 different areas. And so we're looking in all 3 of the CSDs. The charter application process, I don't know how much you know about that process. It's ongoing right now. And so we will see from SUNY whether we are able to open multiple schools or just one. If just one, we'll see which of the 3 CSDs there is the greatest need, demand, and facility availability. But for now, we're really looking to understand what are the priorities for the different communities that we are interested in coming into, and seeing where really is the need the greatest. And that's where we would love to come and offer our school to students.
And how did you, these 700 parents that responded to, I guess, a survey of sorts, how did you reach out to these families? How did these families opt in to provide you with this information? What did you use to gather this information? How did you reach out to these prospective parents? Did you have lists? Could you kind of walk us through what that process looks like? Because this is new to us.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So we did a couple of different things. We had information go out online, on our social media, on press releases. We held a couple of public community meetings in the district at libraries, a couple last fall, a couple this winter. We've attended the CEC and community board meetings of all of the across all of the areas we've been looking at. And then in particular, those families, we did both. We had an online survey to collect input and feedback. And then we also had team members out in the community on street corners near businesses, speaking to folks as they went by, and folks that were interested and had school-age children were able to sign up with us to receive more information in the future when we do have our charter school opening and our application process for a seat.
Out of those 700 and some parents that are in District 28, were they more so in the northern portion of the district or the southern portion of the district?
They were, I would say they were all over, but I'd have to look back at the specific zip codes to really give you that information.
That would be helpful for us to understand, because we are only responsible for schools in the northern portion and only part of the northern portion. So we have schools in Rego Park, Forest Hills, whereas you get into Briarwood, Kew Gardens, that's another community district, and then you get into God, my brain is freezing. Jamaica, St. Albans, that's a whole other part, that's a whole other community board. So that's why it sort of helps us to better understand sort of where you're looking to sort of lay down roots, because then it helps us kind of ask some different questions, because we really, if the school was in the southern part of the district, we would really have no, it's just, yes, according to, as Ari wrote, and he said it better than I can, it is a very big district geographically. It is over an hour on public transit from here to the southernmost part of the district, and you could end up taking 2, sometimes 3 different modes of transportation just to get there, or 3 different, train to a bus to bus to a train to a train to a bus, or vice versa. So that's why it's really hard, and socioeconomically it's broken down, it's very different. So it's just the lack of specifics around that is challenging in this discussion, I think, to be fair.
Completely makes sense. I appreciate that. That context is really helpful for me as well, Heather. And absolutely, I can look back at if the information we had gotten from families who are interested and give you a little bit more clarity as to where that is coming from in the district. And certainly as we continue to narrow in on where within the district we might open the school or would plan to open the school, I will share that information with you. And actually, that is part of why I'm here tonight, is to understand from you all where the need is, what the need is, and how we could be partners if we do come into your jurisdiction, how we could be partners for the kids and families that reside in the district.
Okay.
This might be a silly question actually, but how do you determine the number of seats you need per school building? Especially like if you're going to have a school in our district, let's just say, what factors do you look at in order to determine that? And what other factors do you consider? Let's say SUNY only allows you to have 1 school for Queens. What factors do you consider in determining which district you'll focus on?
Yeah, so I'll answer the second question first. On what factors we look at, it's where is the need and kind of demand from families the highest, where what other school options are in the area. Are there a lot of are there other schools like ours with our kind of model or not? How high performing are the other district schools in that area? And then we look also at, as I mentioned before, kind of access to transportation, and we look at potential facilities. Is there space for us to come in, a building that we can renovate, or space for us to build a facility? Those are the main factors we would look at. On the first question around how many students do we serve, we typically have 3 classes per grade in a school, each with about 30 students, with the exception of our pre-K classes. Those are 18 students per class. And so we look for a building that would be able to accommodate that many students.
And have you cited any buildings so far in our area?
Not yet, no. So we are still fairly early in this process. Again, that's why I wanted to come and talk with you all now, is to get your input as early in the process as possible. So far, we have applied for the charter schools and sort of started our community outreach and engagement and research. And then as that process continues, we are now starting to look at potential facilities and potential locations. So we likely won't know for sure the neighborhood, the facility, the location until later in this calendar year.
Okay. We have 2 more questions via the chat. Ari wants to know, does Zeta have to comply with the class size law that is being phased in?
I am not as familiar with that law, so could you remind me what it is?
The New York State, the governor basically signed a mandate that is requiring like classes to be limited in size, and they're requiring public schools right now to complete this task over the next 5 years. Heather, do I have that about right?
Yeah, there are set numbers that will reduce the class size. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now. But so public schools have to find ways to sort of meet that mandate to reduce class sizes, because right now, for example, in our district, if that law were to go into effect today, almost every classroom in our district would be non-compliant.
I see. Thank you. I'm not sure if we are subject to that, but what I will offer is we actually do have a 2-teacher model. So we have 2 teachers per classroom. So those 30 students in a classroom have 2 teachers serving them. The ratio is one teacher to about 15 students.
Okay.
Does anybody have any other questions? I know Effie's having some tech issues right now. Anybody else have any other questions?
I have one more question, and I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Do you offer busing, and do you use like yellow school busing, or do the kids come to school like in your other locations, like on public transportation?
We do not offer busing. So our students do come on public transportation, or their parents bring them.
Yes, Marcel?
Can you tell me about an after-school model? Like, do you have currently an after-school model in your program and curriculum? And also, can you talk about scheduling? I know that that's granular, but I know that a lot of charter schools don't always operate on the DOE calendar, or they may have early dismissal days. Do you have a model already for that? Like,
Yes, that's a
two-part question.
Yeah, no, that's great questions. We do already have that model in place. So our school schedule, we start near the end of August, and we go through the about the first or second week of June for the calendar year, and then we have a winter break, we have a spring break as well. Our school week schedule, we have Wednesdays are a half day for kids, and then the afternoons are professional development for our staff, for our teachers. And the school hours are 7:45 to 3:30 for our elementary school, and I think I may be slightly off here, but I think it's 8 o'clock to 3:45 for our middle school. And then as far as our after school program goes, we have tutoring available for students that need it, which they can do before or after school. And then we also have an extracurricular program activities that happen after school. And so those would be for students that are interested in kind of pursuing, the extracurricular beyond the school day. We have programming available for that.
To that, do you partner with community-based organizations that are locally housed in your district so that, your after school is, supplemented and not just you all?
We actually don't have the details of that to the top of my head. I know we have explored kinds of opportunities like that, but I can't remember in this moment what the specifics are of what we have right now.
Okay, thank you.
Question to follow up on Marcel is for example, we have some schools in the district that do not offer after school, but buses will come from those community-based organizations. For example, Common Point will come to a like the PS 174. They don't do after school, so they would come to PS 174 and they would pick up the children that have been signed up and paid for their after school program. Would that be something that you guys would be able to coordinate with a community-based organization so that kids could then leave your school, get on a bus, and go to a local CBO that does offer after school?
I believe so. I'd have to check on that, but I do believe we've looked at those kinds of things, and I think we do have something like that at one of our locations, if not multiple. So if there is interest and there is an available partner, we are absolutely would look to coordinate that kind of thing.
Okay, and what percentage of your students are on an IEP?
I'd have to look up that number for you. I don't know it off the top of my head.
What kind of services do you provide students who have autism, who are on the spectrum?
So we coordinate with the DOE if they need advanced services, and we would deliver whatever services their IEP would require.
Okay, and but you don't know what percentage of your students are on an IEP?
Not off the top of my head, but I can get that information for you.
That would be tremendously helpful. And then how do you determine who you take on as a student? Is there an application process? How do you determine your enrollment? Who gets to enroll?
Yeah, so we operate by a lottery system. Anyone who's a New York resident is able to apply for our schools, and the application is really just your contact information, and the grade that you're going to be in. And then it's by random lottery basis. There's a slight weighted preference for students that reside within the community school district where the school is cited, and if you already have a sibling enrolled. But other than that, it is a random lottery basis that determines the enrollment, the students who are offered a seat at our schools.
But I'm curious as to how that works if you've got a student on IEP who has to be in an integrated co-teaching class, and there has to be a certain percentage of general education students in that class and a certain percentage of students who require integrated co-teaching. So if you have to sort of meet a certain standard, how does that work if this truly is a blind lottery?
So getting a seat at the school is the blind lottery. The determination as to what classroom a student is going to be in would come after they've gotten a seat at the school.
So it's truly a blind lottery. A student is just randomly given a number.
It's a randomized. We use a system to do it. I don't know the name of it, but it is a random lottery.
But what if you pulled more students with an IEP than you're able to provide services for?
I suppose
It truly is random. It's possible that you
it is
could.
possible. Yeah.
So how does that work? Because, you know, IEP, the services are complex. Some are simple. Some are just maybe speech therapy. Some are integrated co-teaching and speech therapy. Some is, you know, OT plus speech therapy plus integrated co-teaching plus para. So how does, you know, so that's my concern, is that if this is blind, then how are you able to be sure that you're able to provide services for the students that you have randomly selected through a blind lottery?
Yeah, so we do work with the DOE for certain services. They're contracted paraprofessionals that would come and serve the students in our schools if they are the specific services that our own teachers are not able to provide. And so in that case, if that were to happen, then we would have to get more folks to be able to deliver those services.
Do you have a problem hiring paras, or or does that go pretty well for you?
It has worked pretty well for us. I don't have any specific instances to the other.
Okay, that's good. All right, thank you.
Of course, thank you so much for your questions.
Along the same line, what percentage of your students are ELA learners?
This year we have 12% across our network who are English language learners.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else have any further questions? No?
Hi,
Nope.
Tefi. I'm sorry, I had a lot of technical issues before.
Yay.
Even now I'm hearing you with a little bit of static. Apologies if this was asked before. What location are you planning to use for the school?
That's a great question. We don't yet know what location we will be at, and we're actually still trying to narrow down where within the district we would be located, whether it's in the northern areas that you all oversee or a different part of the district, but we're still looking for a location.
What's the reason you are picking this district as opposed to any other possible district in the city?
So we are looking to open a couple of schools in Queens, one in CSD 28, and we looked at this district as well as the other two that we're looking at in the borough because there is higher family need and demand for charter school options in the area, and we've been looking at a few other criteria around kind of family need and demand for a school like ours, as well as location and facility availability and access to public transportation options, as well as what the performance of the other schools in the area and kind of the different choices of schools in the areas are.
Thank you for answering that. Do you have a target number of seats in mind?
For our first year, we would look to serve 150 to 180 students.
And then you would expand it every year roughly by the same number as you build up the school, right?
By about a half of that. So that number would be for two. We would open kindergarten and first grade, and then we would add a grade level up every year as the students age up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Of course, thank you for your questions.
I think it would be tremendously helpful once you guys have a little bit more nailed down. Because again, as a community board, we work very hard not to trample on decisions that aren't ours to make. So for example, if this was going to be in St. Albans, I would see no reason for us to sort of weigh in on sort of how important, valuable resources that public schools in that part of the district rely on getting funneled to another charter school in the community. That's not for us to talk about. If you are indeed looking at somewhere seriously in the northern part of this district, I think it would be great to have further conversations and to talk more intimately, because that would help us be more specific. Because as to Ari's earlier point, if you look at our district, it is like one long fat sausage, and it's just it's large, and again, we try very hard to stay in our lane and not tell other community districts what to do. So I think, you know, once you have more specifics nailed down, if we're the part of the district you're looking at, you know, we would definitely welcome a second conversation But I think we would want to be very careful if we weren't, that we wouldn't weigh in on a decision that really, or a conversation that really should be had with the corresponding community board. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And I really appreciate your time and your questions and your input today. And certainly as we get clearer on exactly where we'll be, if it is in your district, then I will, of course, well, either way, I'll reach out and let you know. But if it is in your district, then I would love to come back, and or other members of Zeta come back and continue this conversation.
That would be great. I appreciate it. Sherry, do you have anything else
I have nothing
for
fur-
Aileen?
nothing further.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you both. Thank you everyone so much for your time this evening. I think I've been emailing with Christine, so she has my contact information. If any of you have further thoughts or questions for me, I welcome them. Please do not hesitate to reach out.
Thank you
so
very much.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. So before we move on with the agenda, I'd just like to add, we have one other addition to the agenda, which is not on there. We have a resolution to go over that I would like to present to the committee, and we will hopefully vote on it. But for now, why don't we go to the PEP updates with Effie, because I think Ari's still dealing with his kids. Effie?
So the PEP will meet tomorrow in Brooklyn. Not that much really like new stuff going on, I would say. I think the budget is coming up probably like soon. I don't know if you heard regarding the budget. This is really not PEP decisions, but the mayor is kind of backing somewhat back from earlier decisions to cut aggressively into the DOE budget. Now, I'm not going to say he's not cutting anything down, but it's not as aggressive as the previous attempts were. We were told at some point that they're going to cut into District 75. My understanding now is that they're not going to touch District 75 funding. It's like very hard. I mean, people think that the PEP is like involved initially. We're like almost like the last to know. I want to be very clear, like the PEP does not decide on the DOE budget. It's really the mayor and city council that decide the budget. I almost find it amusing that people come sometimes to PEP meetings and complain about the budget, because they're like kind of barking at the wrong tree. You have complaints about the budget, go to the mayor, go to city council. The PEP can't do much really about the budget. It's not really up to us even how to allocate the budget. I mean, there are a lot of things I would like to see changed, but we don't really have the power to do that. Other than that, like in Queens, especially in our district, there's really nothing that I'm aware that's coming up in terms of school utilizations or any specific contracts or anything like that. The one thing that I had a little bit of concern, and Jessica's on the call here, was the bus station on Metropolitan Avenue, and we addressed it in our last meeting. I don't know, Heather, I don't know if you heard anything back from them, from the MTA regarding that.
The MTA right now is collecting feedback. We submitted our feedback that was included in our feedback. I'm sure we will hear back from them, but right now they are literally doing presentations to every transportation committee and every community board. So if they're doing 2 per board, that's 14 boards, that's 28 presentations. So I think until they get all that wrapped up and have collected all that feedback, we may not hear back for at least 30 to 60 days. But it was an excellent point. It was raised more than once. You know, we
I mean,
even
I think we came across loud and clear on that point, right?
yeah, and it didn't make any sense. I have to agree with you. It escaped all logic, in my opinion, as to why that would be gotten rid of. I mean, there are some bus stops that are getting rid of it. I'm like, okay, yeah. But that one, I was like, what? So, you know, hopefully we'll hear back soon. Like 30, 60 days. I think we need to set our expectations to 60 days. And if we hear back early, surprise. So, but great
Right,
feedback.
so that's kind of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Effie.
Thank you, Effie. Ari, are you ready to do the CEC update?
Sure. So I missed the last time, and so I don't know if you got the update from not last month, but the month before, which had a resolution around anti-Semitism. I don't know if you guys discussed
did.
that at all.
We
Yeah.
did, yes.
And so yeah, so I don't know how much you discussed about it was a little bit contentious, not so much the content of it, but the way that it um passed, and they basically kind of rammed it through without public comment ahead of like before passing it, and it was not certainly not even close to unanimous. It was, I think, it barely passed, so it was a little bit messy, and yeah. So there was also another resolution. I'm trying to remember. I think it was just like a general like anti-hate resolution, something like that. They're planning on doing a couple resolutions coming up. One specifically they're going to vote on around Moms for Liberty, who, if you're not familiar, is like a right-wing organization from Florida. They're like well known for being very transphobic, and have some of their chapters have had clear connections to the Proud Boys, so it gives you a little bit of idea of who they are. So there is at least one CEC who has passed a resolution around them, and so that will come up. The next CEC was originally is theoretically scheduled for next Thursday, but because of parent-teacher conferences being next Thursday, there's a possibility it gets moved. They haven't finalized that or sent anything out yet, so we'll see about that. There's also going to be a Chancellor Town Hall coming up in March. I believe it's the 11th, if I'm not mistaken. And so that's an opportunity to ask questions of the Chancellor. We only get the Chancellor once every 2 years. So basically so CEC members get elected for 2-year terms. So once each term, the Chancellor comes to each CEC. So our turn is coming up in a couple of weeks. So right now, there's the opportunity to submit questions if you've got questions for the Chancellor, things like that. Last month's CEC, I'm trying to remember, it all blurs together now, was, if I'm not mistaken, fairly uneventful. I'm trying to remember what the presentation was.
Ari, we did get some information on last month's CEC update, just so you know.
Okay.
So it's okay to focus on this month, or
Yeah, so it's I mean, the one that we had, I mean, it's been almost excuse me, a month since it happened, so I was trying to remember what happened in it. So, yeah. Like I said, the next one's next week, so the timing of it is, I'm trying to remember what happened in the last one. And unfortunately, I don't have notes on me. I'll look and see if I have any other info, but yeah, I know some other folks who were in this chat were there. So if you have any other things to add, feel free to add them.
sure. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Ari. Heather, did you have something to say?
Jessica asked if we were going to have a discussion about the Zeta presentation.
We can do that. Jessica, did you have anything in particular you wanted to discuss about the presentation?
Loosey-goosey, and I don't think it should be, but I don't think this is the place for that. Heather pinned them, and I thought it was great about IEPs because, and English language learners was also another good point because it's not holistically what we see even within our district.
Mhm.
We're in the wrong area.
Yeah, I found it interesting that she was able to pull out the ELA number quickly,
Yeah,
but she did not have the IEP number.
yeah, I thought that was interesting too.
So they'll take the $38,000, but that's it. And there's-
Ari was great at giving an explanation. At the question that I was sort of driving at was sort of like their rent, because
Yep.
what she described as to what they are going to be asking for is the same thing. It's a distinction without a difference. So I appreciate Ari's clarification on that. Because I mean, for me personally, I just have a general frustration with charter schools. I have a general frustration with how they're funded and how they select, because I'm trying to understand how a school can just do a lottery, supposedly conduct a lottery for enrollment, and not be certain that they're going to be able to meet those needs of those students. I mean, I think there is a presumption that their chances of pulling, let's say, 10 consecutive IEP students is pretty slim, and maybe they're right. But I just find that to be a very sort of interesting way to determine enrollment, is literally bingo style. Um,
Yeah, I think there are a lot of issues with that, especially that means I would think you'd want to focus on the students who live in our district rather than bringing in students from other districts. I mean, that's just my own perspective. Um, Students in our district have a hard enough time either getting into the schools here or having enough access to resources. So I just kind of feel like if they're going to be here, the lottery system could possibly pull students from everywhere else.
yeah, I'm just not sure. It just, I mean, Ari, did you have any impressions? I know you were listening in. And I know, Ari, the reason I'm asking you, because you've been involved in some of these conversations with the CEC, when there was a big, what was it, like a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago? Just wanted to get your impressions.
Yeah, I had meant to bring that up, and then I remembered like right as she was leaving and didn't have a chance to type it in, that there was huge pushback when there was a request by a charter to. I mean, it was a co-location, which is always more controversial, but also part of the reason it's more controversial is they're required to go in front of the public for a co-location. Whereas it can be kind of basically behind closed doors. We don't hear about all of the other charters opening. Aren't required to be put in front of the public. They just open them and go. So yeah, it's. I wonder how much they've done their research about the interest. I mean, specifically, like it does seem like a very strange fit for Forest Hills specifically. Like people move to Forest Hills because they want their kids to go to either they want to get their kids to go to the public schools here, or they weren't planning on going to public school in the first place. They're sending the kids to private school, yeshiva, Catholic school, whatever. So it just seems like a weird fit for our neighborhood. Like I don't have like if they found their own space and they were bringing kids from other places, fine. But it also seems like why would you make your kids go so far? Um, if you had a place that's like near, Jamaica Station, like Sutphin Boulevard, whatever, like then you're gonna have a much easier way for kids to get to you because there's a ton of trains and buses and things to draw from. So I wonder how much they've done their research just in terms of the geographics, like and specifically as you mentioned, like transportation just seems like Queens is a hard place and as you mentioned, like having 700 families who expressed interest. Also, like expressed interest doesn't mean like my kid's definitely going to go there. It's like, oh, maybe I'm interested. I don't know. So uh, yeah, it's hard to gauge. I wonder how many, like you said, I'd be curious to see how many of those families that expressed interest are from around here. Um, there's a reason there's not a lot of charters around here. There's just not a lot of interest for it around here. Um, but yeah, I don't know.
Effie, you have your hand up?
Yeah, unfortunately I missed most of it. Did she say that charter school is definitely going to be in its own building and not co-located? Is that for sure?
She's, yeah,
Okay, I guess after the last attempt in District 28 and even 29, we had a lot of pushback back then, so I'm not too surprised. I'm kind of like on the same page as Ari. Like, I would find it very surprising that there would be high demand for a charter school in our area, like meaning Forest Hills, Rego Park District, Community Board 6 area, basically, just because usually, like, if we have like, let's say, above average schools, probably even better than that. So like most places, from what I've seen, usually there's a high demand for a charter school where the schools like in that area struggle. That's not really our case. It would be very bizarre, in my opinion, that they would put like a charter school in like in the Forest Hills area, where almost all schools like it will be tough for them to surpass the other schools in the area to kind of justify the like how would they pull students is kind of what I'm wondering. So I think I don't know. I'm kind of with Ari. Like I don't know if they've done the proper research. Maybe there's no plan to be here. Maybe the plan is to be like the south side of District 28, which to me makes more sense. Also transportation wise, I don't know, like other than the F train and E train, I don't know that there's that much subway lines going in District 28. Um, Buses can be tough, I don't know. Like I don't like yeah, I'm like with Ari. Like it's kind of like a little bit surprising that they're even looking in this area.
well, and that was why I sort of wanted her to understand that, like, we don't speak for other community boards. We have our own opinions and the needs of our community, until you really know where I mean, the differences between the needs of our community in the north and the needs of the community in the south are distinctly different. So I don't quite understand um having a conversation until you have a more honed in geographic location, you know? Um, because again, the things that we're looking for here and the things that they would be looking for there are very different. The demands on lives are different. So that's why I just wanted her to be clear, because I don't want her going back saying, well, I had this conversation and they said this, and have it sort of characterize what the community board in District 28 said. That's why I also wanted her to kind of understand that, back again to Ari's point, this is a very diverse district. This is a very long district. And we don't pretend to speak for anybody else but ourselves. So that was kind of, I don't know. I'm not keen on charter schools, so I'm never going to be super easy on the questions, because as a parent who sits on a school leadership team and I see the money we need to provide the kind of programs we would like to provide that she described, they don't make it any easier when they take money away from public schools. That's just Heather, mom, SLT person, not necessarily community board chair opinion, free of charge.
I was gonna say, you think? We could tell, Heather. We could tell you're not keen.
I'm also the mom of a child who
I
has
know.
been on an IEP since day one.
I know.
And
That's
when
tough.
you hear like, oh, this would be great for your child, and yet they don't take them, I'm like, what? Are they dented cans and they're not good enough? I just, sorry, Mama
No,
Bear.
no. I understand, because I'm even sitting and I'm really trying to I have so many different hats that I wear that I'm kind of looking at this from a different lens. And so there's like the, okay, resident, lens. This is my home, and I have children here, and I raise children, and what do I want from them? But then also, if I have children that have special needs or challenges or whatever, I want to know that I still have the same options. That, you know what I mean? So I totally get it. But then I also know as a service provider and as a CBO in the community, you know, I get it. I get it. So I'm really trying to sit and really take it all in. I did ask the question about CMO because I realized that while we asked about the diversity in their leadership team and the diversity in their staff, the CMO is the management company, and that's still a different beast. So it's still like you could have like kind of a puppet, right? Like that's, so I just kind of realized that I maybe didn't go, we could go a little bit deeper to find out who's really, really behind them.
And I
And
did
if
forward
that's
that
really
question.
diverse.
I've already forwarded that question to Christine to follow up
Oh, thank
on that, 'cause I thought that was a very keen question. And I also appreciated your question about CBOs and after
Yeah.
school programming, because I also believe that every school and every interacts differently with CBOs. Some
Yeah.
schools bring in CBOs to offer programming. I know that the principal at 174 was not allowing anyone in her building because she didn't trust them. So she was more than willing to deal with multiple buses from multiple CBOs to take kids to different places. She'd rather deal with that headache, which I
That's
thought
right.
was a very, very fair thing.
Yep.
So I think, and I don't know how after school programming is structured in the south part of the district. That's why it's like, how do you have a conversation with us about a part of the district, I don't know, that we don't know about?
Right.
And I'm also, because there is that divide in our district, we need to be sensitive to speaking for other people. It's not our place. I don't know, it was weird. I just thought there would be more information because they've been doing these, like when she talked about the library, they've been doing these events at different places for several months. So this is quite a runway they have till they get to where they want to be. So, but I know I want to shut up because I know that Sherry wants to talk about the resolution.
Yeah, I do. It's okay, Heather. No, honestly, the conversation's super important. So I'm not going to interrupt it. But yes, okay. So last time we met, we spoke about the governor's mandate where there's going to be a limit on class size coming up over the next 5 years. And we talked about how there's inadequate funding to allow this to happen for our local schools. So Heather and I, we drafted a resolution that we would like to present to the board regarding this issue.
Sherry's being humble. She wrote 98% of this. I added one damn sentence and corrected some prepositions. So, I mean, Sherry wrote most of this. Are you able to share your screen, Sherry?
Trying to do that
Sherry,
right
can
now.
you share?
Let's see. I think so. I got it. Can you all see?
It says you're sharing, starting to share. Okay, there we go.
You got it?
Mhm.
Do I need to make this bigger or can you see it?
I think everyone can make it bigger. If you look right underneath or right on top of the document, there should be something that says plus or minus and like a 66%. So depending on your age, if you're like me, you need it really big and reading glasses.
I'm actually not. Oh, wait, no, I'm not seeing it. Where is that?
You may not be able to see it because you're the one sharing.
Ah, yeah, I don't see it. Let's see. Is that better? How about that?
Let's see. Yeah, that's big.
Okay, good. So,
Mm,
whereas on June 2nd, 2022, the New York State Legislature overwhelmingly passed Section 9460/A10498 and Governor Hochul signed an unfunded mandate requiring New York City Public Schools to implement a 5-year plan reducing class sizes beginning in the fall of 2022. Whereas New York City's public schools adjustments to its fair student funding formula announced on January 23rd, 2022 does not consider the needs for more teachers, nor provides proper monetary avenues for schools to decrease classroom sizes. Whereas the high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools within Queens Community District 6 are severely overcrowded, and according to the latest available data, student enrollment at these schools we don't know the number, but are whatever the percentage is over capacity. Whereas smaller class sizes would improve academic outcomes for our students, including students with special education needs. Whereas in order to fulfill the governor's mandate by planning and finding sufficient space to build new education spaces or expand existing ones must commence now, as these projects on average can take 5 years or more to complete. Whereas elementary school children must be able to attend their zoned elementary school or a neighboring elementary school within a half-mile or less from their home. Be it resolved that the Education and Youth Committee of Queens Community Board 6 requests the New York State Legislature to pass a funding bill in a timely manner that would provide schools with the necessary funds to fulfill this legislation. So I guess the first question is, do you want to make any changes to this resolution? Whether it's the wording or you want to add something or take away something? I'm opening it up to everybody.
Because we're sharing the screen and we can't see all your lovely faces or anything in your boxes, if you could use the raised hand function in the the raised hand function at the bottom of your screen, that would be great.
Yeah, I actually can't see much of anybody. How do I?
I can see it. I can screen for you, but I don't see anyone. Oh, Ari? Ari, do you have a question?
I'm on my phone. It's hard to navigate.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just trying to think through. We have one of the whereases is about how the city has failed. It says, whereas New York City Public Schools adjustments to its fair student funding announced does not consider a need for more teachers. So I wonder, like, if this is going to the New York State Legislature, if that like weakens this resolution to be like, well, because New York City is like, I mean, this is Lou's like major complaint is that to him, fair student funding, which like has been fulfilled, was money that was supposed to go toward making class sizes smaller, and the DOE has not used it properly. And so I wonder if saying like, because New York City Public Schools didn't adjust for that, to me, like if we're sending this to I guess that's also a question. It's like, who would this be sent to? Does it go to Lou? Who does it go to?
I think your point about the fact that it almost seems like we're saying, yeah, you gave us money. Yeah, the DOE spent it poorly. So hi, we need more money, basically. And so I think to your point, I think, yeah, that probably does weaken it. We were going to send it to all of our state representatives and of course to Lou, since he's sort of the driving force of all of this. Because the state, because this is a state mandate, the state needs to fund it. We can't do this without state money. Even with the fair student funding that we got already, and settling that out, I think we all recognize, even if it had been used appropriately, we would still be in need of additional funding in order to accomplish the sort of the enrollment for each class. You know, we can't meet that obligation, even if that had been applied properly. I mean, am I understanding that correctly?
I mean, I suppose the state can always argue like, well, that's what this money was for, and therefore, like you said, you used the money wrong. I I do think that I'm trying to think if there's like a way to phrase it. I mean, part of it is like the historic like lack of funding from the state, right? I mean, it took us, what was it, 20 something years to finally get the money that the DOE was owed, and it's not like they like gave us the back money of the billions of dollars that they should have given us over the last 20 years. I mean, maybe that's maybe that's part of our argument of like, yes, we were supposed to, but in order to be able to have the space, we needed to be able to build, and we couldn't build because you didn't give us the money for 20 years.
So you're okay with the first whereas? So what is your recommendation then, Ari, for the second whereas? How would you phrase that?
I think I think I would strike that whereas, and I would replace it with a whereas about the state having underfunded despite the fair student funding mandates from the what was the lawsuit? I forget what it was called.
Contract for excellence?
Yeah, no, not contracts for excellence. Uh, I forget the name of it off the top of my head. Um, but I would say like, um, you know, the money that was owed us could have been used for proper for capital expenses that were needed in the long run. I think that then I think that whereas will help um, to point out like, look, we're still owed money that you said you are supposed to have given us since what was it, 2004 or whatever it was.
Heather, are you typing in the document or?
I was. I'm just sort of stuck. I just did a strike through just as a note so that we wouldn't lose the original text.
I
Sherry?
got Okay,
Um,
because I was trying to type and
oh, sorry. You should be able to type same time as me though. Okay, so it sounds to it, maybe Sherry, we need to take this back and work it a little bit more, but I do want to I see that Effie also has his hand up. So maybe, instead of trying to work this on this call, because it is 10 of 9 and brains just don't work this well late at night. I'll just make a notice to the characterization of Ari's comments, and then we can also, Effie has his hand up. So Effie?
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt. So it has been the lawsuit was since 2007. I don't know if the term you're looking for is foundational aid. But there are a few things here were said was somewhat inaccurate. While it is true that New York State has not given us 100% of the funding they were supposed to for about 15 years or so, basically from 2007 until COVID, um, it is that this money is still an unfunded mandate, despite John Liu saying that it is funded. I had many arguments with him that I don't appreciate that he's kind of misleading the public because it is not funded. There's a slight increase in contracts for excellence. Contracts for excellence has 6 different categories, only one of which is to reduce class size. It's not the only thing. And most of the money that we got extra from the state is really to supplant the missing money that was not given before. A lot of schools got roughly 90 cents on the dollar. Now we're getting 100 cents on the dollar, but it's not for the purpose of decreasing class sizes. It's for the purpose of whatever previously a school needed to function, assuming that it gets 100% of its funding, you know, like the all kind of programs we want to run. We do it. I mean, to have smaller classes, we definitely need more funding. And I don't want to get too deep into it. For me, like the whole issue is almost moot because like the first thing we need to do is start building more schools. And if we don't build more schools, like the whole thing is just like almost like an academic discussion. It is impossible in practice to increase to decrease small classes when you have no space to do it in a school. And right now we are overcrowded as is. Even if we didn't have a small class size mandate, like in our area, it would behoove us to, you know, have more classes just to kind of shrink the overcrowding that we're already experiencing with the large class sizes we currently have. So to make it smaller, it's just going to make the problem worse. I don't see how things are going to be better without funding and without schools. Also, a couple of other inaccuracies. There's really like no research that points that smaller class sizes are better in like high schools or middle schools. Like the research really points to mostly kids 8 years or younger, and also special ed. However, what we say in our resolution here, I think it's like the fourth whereas maybe, I can't read it right now. It does not actually affect special ed at all, because most special ed classes are 12-on-1 or 8-on-1 or something like that. So that doesn't affect them. The only
No, that's not
special
true.
ed that it affects a
Effie?
little bit is ICT classes.
There's actually a reason
Yes.
why I singled out special ed is because a lot of students with those types of needs do better in a smaller setting with more with like one-on-one attention or like with more individualized attention. So that's one of the reasons why I singled it out because it actually does benefit them.
And Effie, special ed has multiple classifications. I mean, yeah, 12-1 is one option, but a majority of our special ed students that are not in District 75 schools are in ICT classes. I mean, if you have speech therapy, you are considered a student in special education because you have your IEP. If you need co-teaching only, because you need redirected, you're an ICT student. So the very fact that you're in an integrated co-teaching class and two teachers, I mean, it's very much a model that in itself that shows that you need two teachers to teach the same volume of students. So I get what you're saying as far as the 12-1, but that's only one component of the overall offerings for special education.
I mean, I was on the special ed committee among other committees on the special, like on the task force that we had, and it only affects a little bit ICT, and actually, if you have let's say only speech therapy on your IP, believe it or not, then you would not be allowed to be in an ICT class. That's another fight I had for a while. It might sound surprising, but like if you have only related services, you're not allowed to be in an ICT class.
That's not true. My daughter
That's
had speech therapy and was in an ICT class in elementary school and was in an
without
ICT class.
without being designated that she has to be in an ICT class on the IEP.
She was designated as having to be in an ICT class, and she also got speech therapy.
Right. That is acceptable. I'm saying there are some students who, let's say, have only like speech therapy or occupational therapy, but it doesn't say that they need to be in an ICT class, and they're actually not allowed to be in an ICT class, which is like, why can't they be part of the general student, or you know, but whatever. That I don't want to digress.
can
That's like
be.
a whole other thing.
You can have a student who is getting speech therapy that's in a regular general ed class because the integrated co-teaching is not indicated as a need as something therapeutic for the child, and they just get pulled out of the class to go to speech, or the speech therapist comes and pushes in, depending on whichever model is most appropriate for the student given the age and the challenges that the student is presenting with.
Correct.
But a child can't, and that's another child who, again, is getting special services in a classroom, in a general classroom setting. So again, it's a student who is on an IEP that isn't in a special ed class. That really could benefit.
I'm not following the logic here. How does that like if someone gets pulled out of a class or pushed into a class, how do they benefit from a smaller class size?
Because the challenge that they have with speech therapy is something that they are trying to overcome. And having and being in a smaller class helps that teacher give that student more time.
Exactly.
More time to allow that student who's having a hard time putting something into
Oh,
words.
okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, but that applies to
You
all
have
students,
the
right? Not,
luxury of time.
And it's not just speech therapy, it's also students who have language processing
Yeah.
disorders and attention disorders, like I mean all kinds of things.
right. No, but I'm saying, I mean, even if you don't have an IPU, you would benefit from like having more attention from the teacher. I'm not disagreeing with that.
Right, but and I think that's what the statement generally espouses is that smaller class sizes can help improve students with, not just with these needs, but in general, it helps students with a more individualized attention. And you kind of get that with a smaller class size.
But it does seem like at this point, this isn't quite ready for prime time. So maybe Sherry and I need to take this back and work on it a bit more, sort of address. We got the information from Ari about campaign for fiscal equity. So that will be helpful, and we can kind of work on the wording. We can maybe tighten up the how it's beneficial. Is there anything else in the last two whereases that we have? I added the last whereas because I know from listening to community conversations that families, especially with elementary school students, are concerned. Quite frankly, for me, I would like to see SCA provide me a school by school plan as to how they plan to meet this class size mandate. They keep saying we're going to do it, and I don't see a plan to do it. I'd like to know how they're going to take those students at, let's say, 174 and how they're going to do it, what spaces they're going to utilize so that we can understand it. Because what this is doing is it's making a lot of parents, again, flip out, go back to the whole thing about they're going to throw my kid on a bus and they're going to send them to Jamaica. I read this a lot, and it's not just from one particular person. And so I think it was important in listening to people in our community to sort of say, whereas elementary school students must be able to attend their zoned elementary school or neighboring elementary school within a half mile or less from their home. Does anybody have an issue with that? Does anybody think a half a mile is ridiculous? I see Jessica's hand.
I actually think that's a really great point, but a good example is 220 can't accommodate any more kids. And so when I asked the borough president, the SCA, where those kids were going to go with the 3 buildings that were built across, they were told 206 or 196, but I don't know if that qualifies as half a mile. Within a half a mile also at a certain age and that kind of stuff, you could also get busing. So maybe also making sure that if you have to live farther away, yellow school busing would be available. But I think
that's a whole other thing. That busing is all based on the state policy from Office of People Transportation. That gets us into a whole. It's a terrible policy. It needs completely changed.
I do like that. I think that the elementary school, it's important. And right, I didn't go to my zone school, neither the high school, neither the middle school or the elementary school. So, but that was my choice to do so. So, but I think I'm 0.6 of a mile away from 220.
Wow.
But I like the half a mile. Half a mile in the city is very long, but I think that would be doable.
Right, because I think like my kids went to 174. Their zone school was 139, and that was actually 0.9 of a mile from our home. And that's why I was wondering if a half a mile was a little unrealistic. So okay, so Sherry, I think we have homework. The education committee gave us homework. So if we take this back and email it out to you guys, could you guys like in a week or so, because this week's kind of hairy for me because we have the borough president doing a lot of is doing a lot of work in this community, so there's a lot of events that I have to run to and stuff. Plus, we have our own committee stuff this week. So I will, if we could get it maybe the end of next week. So like whatever day that is, like 7th, 8th.
Actually, Heather,
Yes, ma'am. Oh, that's right,
um,
because next week you've got something going on. So
yeah,
right. Okay, so give us 3
Right.
weeks.
yeah.
Is 3 weeks reasonable, Sherry?
I'm good with 3 weeks. Also, we need to plan the next meeting and schedule the next meeting. So,
Do you have dates that you're thinking of?
I'm looking at my calendar right now.
March
see.
8th is International Day of the Woman anyway. But
What was that?
Mel's is having a women's event.
That's awesome. The week of March 18th and the week of March 25th.
March 25th. I can't believe it's freaking March. But it is. March 25. That's a Monday. That should be fine for me.
Okay. Is everyone available March 25th?
Yes.
Effie's hand is
to-
up. Oh, go ahead.
Me? Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think that half mile or 1 mile, whatever it ends up being, I think it's a very pertinent point. I frequently talk to the SCA. I have not heard of any plan whatsoever to build anything additional in our community, or even that much in Queens at large. Forget about our communities. So I'm very worried how they are going to implement anything without, if anything, the SCA budget has been cut by about 2 billion. So it doesn't look like there's plan to build a lot more. If anything, the opposite direction is indicated from a funding perspective. Um, I mean, at this point, I don't see any way to implement a smaller class size without busing kids, and I'm not exaggerating. If you live in North Queens, probably they will be bused to the Bronx, and if you live some other places in Queens, you're going to be bused to Brooklyn. It's not even like bus from Queens to Queens. There's just no space in Queens. Like most places are don't have the space, to accommodate that. And no, the SA always says that they are counting it for it, but like you never see any real. I mean, show me the paper, like show me the work. Like what is the plan for expanding? I don't see anything. So I don't know. Like it's just sounds like a lot of talk, but I don't think there's any concrete plan in place. And again, if they come up with a plan, in a good case scenario, they take 5 to 6 years to implement it. Many times they can take easily over a decade. So like, I just, with my experience, I don't see how that happens.
Yeah. It's crazy.
So definitely any resolution, I think, should definitely has like some kind of addressing the SCA also, whether it's indirectly by, saying that we don't want to travel more than a mile away, for especially on the elementary school, school level. I mean, I think the kids should be like relatively close to where they live. Nobody wants to have their 5, 6-year-old, bust miles and miles away from where they live. There should be a
Can
close
update
by
that to a
option.
mile. I think that's reasonable, Effie. I
Yeah.
think that's very reasonable. In fact, I'll make a note of it now because I don't want to forget.
I
Okay.
mean, a mile is good, and we would be lucky that nobody has to go more than a mile away. I'm pretty sure about that.
So we'll change it to 1
And it-
mile or less.
Right. I mean, there's more issues. Like the way that they calculate mile is like as the crow flies, they call it, which is also ridiculous, like because
As the
sometimes
crow
it's a lot of
flies?
travel. Yeah, that's how the Office of District Planning like calculates distances. It's just like how far away you are from one place. So like if like you could be across the river from something, but if it's less than a mile away, that counts as being within a mile of your address.
So if you lived on one side of Flushing Meadow Park and what you were looking at was on the other side of Flushing Meadow Park, even though you'd have to travel 2 miles to get there and you're 1 mile apart, it still qualifies as 1 mile apart.
Correct.
because the
Or if
crow
you're
can
one,
fly.
or if you're one side of the railroad track and like, you know, like you need to travel 1 mile in each direction just to get across to the other side of the railroad track, they don't, they will consider you like 100 feet away if you're on the other side of the railroad track, you know, even though like you have to drive 2 or 3 miles back and forth, like, you know, to cross the railroad, they will say, hey, it's 100 feet away across the railroad. So like I had a lot of issues with them also, like how they calculate distances.
But you know, that really burns our district because we literally have a line through our district drawn by the railroad.
I know.
And the way we have to navigate around that, thankfully, our district has a footbridge. But that footbridge is close to me. But if you're a parent that lives somewhere else, that footbridge isn't close to you. So then it really screws with your calculations. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Effie.
Ari,
What was I gonna say? I had it in my mind and then I lost it. Goodness. Oh, the deadline. So the budget deadline for the state is April 1st. So a March 25th meeting means not a lot of time to actually send this to New York State legislators and have them think about it before they have to vote on their budget.
Yeah, that's right.
okay, so
So Sherry, maybe you and I'll just have to make time this week to look at it and get it done before you have to be off next week. And then next week, I can collect the votes from the committee before the board meeting on the third, whatever. And then we can, is it okay if we do it that way, Sherry?
that is fine. Just so you know, I will be out the 7th and possibly the 8th, depending on how I'm feeling.
Okay.
But up until that point, I can help with whatever. And after the 8th, I can help as well. So,
Okay. Perfect. So then we'll work on it this week. Ari, thank you for that point. Ooh, time is a flying. Okay, I'm also gonna copy the chat just in case and put it in my notes for tonight, my own personal notes for tonight. I'm just letting you guys know for sake of transparency that I'm collecting that information. This way, if we have to refer back to it, we have it. Because you guys put a lot of good stuff in there. I'll also make sure to see if there's any notes that need to go back to Zeta outside of the question about the MCO from Marcel. And I think, Ari, your hand is still up. Was there something else? No. Okay.
okay. Does anybody have anything else to add to the discussion? No? All right, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank
All
you,
right, guys.
everyone.
Have a good
Thank
night,
you.
everyone.